Hey you guys, I'm gonna give you a sneak peek behind the scenes of an interview I am getting ready to do. Of course, I start to go on camera and then there is... So hi everybody, I have a really special guest for us today. I have a good friend, Natalie, and so she's going to talk to you a little bit about a really sensitive topic, and I just talked about that a little bit ago. But Natalie, can you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yes, hello, my name is Natalie Shuey. Nice to meet you all.
So Natalie, we are going to talk about like how and kind of the ins and outs of being a funeral director. Is that the role that you're in right now?
Yes, I am a licensed funeral director and embalmer. That is correct.
Super fascinating. Oh my gosh. I have so many questions. So I guess naturally, I am wondering, how does one decide to become a funeral director and want to embalm people? I know everybody's path is different, just like when I've learned to be a therapist, my path is way different than other people. But how did you land in this position, and talk about your just how that was for you?
Well, I think a lot of people say funeral directing is kind of the calling, and I would agree with that. Really, I was fascinated with the career. One, because I just wanted to help people in a time of sadness and just try and be there and guide people through a difficult time. I feel that I had the compassion and the empathy for people to want to kind of guide them through and just kind of help them and make that time a little bit easier, if I can say. I mean, it's such a sensitive and difficult time, but just to, listen to them and just be there as kind of a support.
Yeah. Have you had any experience before that? Like, have you been to like funerals when you were younger and you're just like curious, or like, how do you naturally like?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Just attending family services. I come from a heavy military background,
Oh, I
and
didn't know that.
just seeing how the dynamics of, like military honors and just the detail that went into celebrating a person's life. I just was very fascinated with all facets of it.
Absolutely, man. I know when I watch like a military funeral, I get choked up every time. I love the symbolism and just the whole process. And oh, it's so touching. My husband is former military, so that's the kind of funeral he wants to have. So that's really fascinating. We might have to have a talk about that later, because I don't know how you set something like that up. But anyway, so let's start with like what is the purpose of a funeral director? You're a funeral director, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
What's your purpose? What do you do?
So the purpose of a funeral service really is to celebrate a person's life. And, and a lot of people think that the funeral service is really for the living. I mean, it's a way for loved ones and relatives and friends to show support. And it's really a way to honor your loved one, and whatever, it kind of forecast there. We talked about the military, but kind of honor them. What were their interests, and what was it that they did in their life that was a legacy? It's just really kind of honoring your loved one or your friend, and kind of just having that like memorial. And I don't want to say closure, because I don't think you get closure, but it is kind of a way also, if a body is present, to really kind of, when you see that hand, be able to touch a person's hand and see them, that really is realizing my loved one is passed. Right. So does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you said don't, it's not really closure. That's something that I'm always like, I feel like people need closure. But maybe there's a different term I can call it. So it wouldn't be closure. What would you say? What would you say would be like the thing to say?
Well, yeah, like I don't think closure is the right word because you can
Yeah.
go through a grieving process for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I think, a lot of times when you have the body casketed, just to be able to see your loved one and touch their hand, it's like that
Mhm.
final memory picture and
Yes.
kind of your final way of saying goodbye, I guess might
Mhm.
be a good way to maybe say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I have so many questions. I do some grief counseling, but you could probably really give me some really good suggestions on how to do some grief processing. But again, that might be another conversation. This might be a series. Who
Sure,
knows? But
sure.
so the term embalming, what does that mean exactly? I've heard that used kind of loosely, and of course, I think most people know that word. But what does it mean? What is the purpose of it?
So embalming, so you have a couple different processes with doing services. Folks can choose cremation or they can do embalming. What embalming does, it allows families to view their loved one. So it there's
Mm.
three things
Which
that
is
embalming
important, I'm
does.
guessing, is really important from what we talked about a little bit ago.
Yeah. So what embalming does, it does three uh, different things. So it restores a natural color to the body. It serves as a disinfection, but I think most people think of embalming as preserving. So it allows time because a lot of times families are out of state and different things like that. So you don't have a funeral, in 3 days. Sometimes that can go out a week or so. So a
Right.
embalming process allows time for services to take place and it preserves the body so that viewing can be done.
Yeah. So it's there's is there no benefit to the actual like deceased body itself, but it's more for the family members?
Well, by law, a deceased has to either be cremated or embalmed in 72 hours.
In 72 hours. Okay.
In
Okay.
72 hours, they either have to be cremated or buried. So
Mhm.
that's the law because, and I'm trying to be sensitive with my words, but bodies can really kind of change. And then especially if somebody's on chemotherapy, certain drugs, certain therapies can kind of hasten a decomposition process.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody wants to actually view their loved one, and especially if somebody has a contagious disease, COVID, something like that,
Oh,
if there's going to
yeah.
be any public viewing, and not even a public viewing, even if family wanted to do um, just like a identification viewing or just a personal viewing, if the body is got a contagious disease, we would require an embalming. But
Gotcha.
yeah, but you just never know. All people and all deceased are different, so to do any kind of viewing in a 72-hour, if somebody wants a service after a 72-hour period, it is required by law.
Yeah. Which brings me to a question. We're just coming off the pandemic, and I know I've heard a lot of like people couldn't have services and people couldn't have, big gatherings during that time. So, how did that affect you as a funeral director, or how did you see that affecting families?
Unfortunately, that was kind of sad with COVID, especially when COVID was new. We could only
Yeah.
allow 10 people in the funeral home at a time. It's not
Oh,
like that
only
now.
10?
10. So,
Oh,
and I had, and I hope I can do a personal case, but I did have a little boy that had passed away of gastrointestinal issues. And what we did was an 8-hour visitation, and the family had that lined up where 10 people would come in. They would have 20 minutes, they would leave, then 10 other people would come in. We did
oh,
that for 8 hours so they
oh my
could
gosh.
allow
How
people.
exhausting
So
for you.
well, it was, but we do what we can to make sure the family has their time, and there's not
Mhm.
enough time in scenarios like that. But
Uh,
now it's different. Before, when we had limits on people, it's since progressed luckily to where there wasn't parameters on the number of people. Then it was mask mandated, but now luckily we're kind of outside of that now.
Yeah. Thank God
But
for
yes,
that.
it was tough in the beginning. We just tried to make it work with families and kind of schedule things in intervals where people could come in and walk out and do it that way. So it wasn't a fun period by any means, but families are entitled to have that time.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Whew, that does sound rough. So what do you like about being a funeral director and doing what you do?
Well, I like a lot of different things about it. So one is just working with families and guiding them through that process, as I mentioned, doing arrangements. Arrangements is really the setup time when you're doing all the details of the service and what they want and the ins and outs of that. And then it's the service day. And for me, I really love when a family will compliment me after service. Thank you. You made such a difficult time easy for us, or we're very happy with the way things went. And when I hear the word happy at a time of sadness, I know I've done and have succeeded in what I, should rightfully do as a funeral director and providing that service. So I love that. But I do also like just being in the prep room and trying to provide the most positive memory picture for families and doing that aspect too. So really the whole piece of it.
Yeah, I like the memory picture. That actually just gives me a visual, and it's an analogy that I totally understand and get. So I like that. So I'm sure there's some worst parts about it. What are some things that you don't like about being in this position?
Well, I think the worst part for me is, let's face it, funerals are expensive. So I really don't like talking money, but I do have to build a contract. It is a business. And for me, it's really just about what the family wants. So, I'm not necessarily caring if a family buys more economically priced merchandise or if they buy the most expensive merchandise. For me, it doesn't matter. It comes down to the family's wishes. But yeah, that's not the highlight or something I enjoy is talking finances, but that is definitely part of it.
Yeah.
And, of course, seeing people, there are scenarios, not everybody dies of natural causes. So I think those cases when it isn't natural, that is very difficult to kind of sit in with families and kind of go through arrangements with family when a death is unexpected and stuff. So but they deserve the same amount of time, and I would never judge anybody, so you just gotta go in and treat everybody the same. But those scenarios are very difficult sometimes.
Yeah. It sounds like you really just got to be flexible with your thoughts, your feelings, your time, and just treat each person as an individual, or each family as an individual, and cater to their needs.
Yep, absolutely. It's all about listening to their needs.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And some people in arrangements will laugh, and they're talking about memories, and they have, come to not terms. I don't know if that's the right word, but they've accepted the death. And then there's just sometimes when families are falling apart and, so you just have to understand everybody grieves differently. And, it's just about listening to their needs and just tailoring a service to honor their loved one the way that they want that in certain parameters, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. So with all of that, so what would a day in the life of you look like? So you wake up, and then what does Natalie's day look like?
Well, it's always different. So there's not any kind of real defined type schedule. So obviously we're a 365, 24-hour
How do you manage
business.
that?
Well, we take turns being on call. So,
okay.
yep. But as far as like during business hours, if we would have a death, so we would rotate out who does arrangements with the family. When you do arrangements, you're calling a pastor, you're ordering either an urn or a casket, the flowers, you're submitting an obituary, you're typing that, you're going through those details with the family, then you're submitting that to the paper. If that's a military honors, then you're contacting whatever branch, the military. So it just kind of, it's very detail oriented. So that's one trait I would say you would need to be a funeral director is.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
I have a checklist, so I make sure that I don't miss anything, but really it's collecting information for purposes of the death certificate. And then once you make those phone calls, then it's really just setting up the chapel area or church or whatever with the flowers and getting everything set up for the service and the music and all of that. So and then obviously preparing the deceased for either viewing or if it's cremation and an urn or however their wishes were.
Wow. So, and in the beginning, we talked a little bit like how you chose it, but like what kind of like I'm sure you have to go to school for this. You can't just like apply on Indeed and be like a funeral director one day, I'm guessing. So what kind of prep work does it take to be a funeral director for those people out there who maybe are as fascinated and interested in this?
Absolutely. So you have to already have an administrative or what I'm going to say associate's degrees So you have to have, I would say your prerequisites pretty much done. So I had an associate's degree in medical administration. So the only other class I needed an extra, since I was all business, I needed an extra science class, which I took anatomy. But yeah, you need to have at least established a 2-year degree. And then you will enroll in a mortuary science program. So in the state of Iowa, it would be DMAC and Ankeny. They're the only one in the state of Iowa.
You're the only one in the state of Iowa?
The only one in the state of Iowa. But if people live out of state, they can certainly do online classes and things like that and do it that way. But then I know there's Worsham in Chicago. So yeah, but you would have to go to school for it because it does require a license.
Yeah. Okay. So if you could do anything else other than this, kind of some fun questions, what would you do?
That's funny that you say that. I would be in forensics. So yeah. So kind of similar to the same. So doing something around the lines of maybe detective work or something like that. And I do love all kinds of animals. So maybe having some kind of sanctuary of animals and being a caretaker and living in like a one little bedroom and just being out there and taking care of animals. So it would be one of those.
Yeah. That is awesome. Yeah. So I think one just really quick question, because we are a mental health channel and it sounds like you have a very stressful job. So how do you take care of your mental health, or how do you take care of like your self-care? So yeah, I'm guessing it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And yes, it can be hard. A lot of times you'll go home and you'll just feel like your energy has just been completely zapped, rightfully so. You're working with a lot of emotions. But for me, I like to do a lot of writing and I like to make candles. So
fun.
Yeah. So I like to be creative.
Yeah. I think that's super important.
Yeah. And if the weather's nice, I like to be a part of nature and go for a walk if weather permits. But I would say that would be what I enjoy.
And speaking of that, I am really regretting sitting out here. I thought, Iowa, it felt a little cooler today than it did yesterday. So I'm like, I'm going to sit outside and Natalie and I are going to talk. I'm going to drink my lemonade. And it is way more humid out here than I expected. My glasses keep fogging up.
Sure.
Yes. Well, any other thing, if I didn't ask, that you think would be important for anybody to know about this or know about you, or any side advice for anybody who's maybe planning a funeral or going through a death right now themselves?
Absolutely. Well, one other thing on the schooling thing, it would be 2 years. So someone would get their mortuary science degree. It would be 2 years, and then you would do a year internship after that. So,
and that's like, for those people who don't know what internship is, that's like hands-on, very supervised training with somebody who's very skilled, and they can oversee and you can learn as you go under that skilled person.
Yes.
Yeah, very important, I would think, especially in this field, because it's not like I'm guessing this isn't something that you had experience with before you got into this degree.
Oh, sure.
So yeah.
So actually, you really have 3 years before you're kind of out on your own. So, I mean, a lot of the internship, they'll kind of let you go and do your thing after a certain point when they see you're skilled and you got it. But yeah, in the beginning, you are very heavily supervised.
Yeah.
But I would say for anybody, I know just with families that I meet, you can do pre-arrangements on services. I do know some families do decide to get their wishes down on paper and to pay for their services ahead of time, so their family doesn't have to incur the costs. And I do know when I meet with families who have lost a loved one and their services have been pre-arranged, they're dealing with the stress of a loss, but knowing that they don't have to pay for a service because their loved one thought about that in advance. So that's just something I would tell people to maybe kind of consider if you want to, look into pre-arrangements. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot other than just maybe speaking with your family about, your wishes, and just kind of letting folks know if you don't want to do the pre-arranged and set the funds aside for that. Just having those tough conversations with families so they kind of know, I would say. And, just be there for your loved ones, tell them you love them. And I would say, for me, I think life does go by very fast, or it's very short, however you want to word that. So I think it's so important to really be grateful for every day that we do have, is what I would say. I'm just, especially being in the business, I think it's really changed me in a very positive way to not sweat the small stuff.
Awesome. Yeah,
so
definitely. And having a grateful heart too, it sounds like, is really important to you, and probably important in this field.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate the little stuff.
Yes, very much
awesome. So. I am so glad you decided to do this with me. Can I just do another side note real quick?
Yes,
when
absolutely.
you and I last talked, it was at the New Kids on the Block concert.
That's what I'm talking about. Enjoy. Yeah, get out there, have fun. Yes.
Yeah, we're kind of showing their age a little bit, but you and I heard you talking a little bit about kind of trends in burials and stuff, and that's what really got me like, whoa, this is really cool. And I'm not in this world, so it was totally like, I'm sure I had my jaw open when I was listening to you talk. But are you comfortable enough talking about that real quick?
Yeah, well, so there's this right now, what I see, the biggest trends, we're really going to a cremation, heavy in cremation that families are doing, but there's still a lot of traditional families out there that want to have their family embalmed and have the body present, and some will have a viewing with the body present and do the embalming and then do cremation afterwards. There are other things kind of coming through that aren't real prevalent right now, but there is such a thing called green burials.
Did you say green burials?
Green burials, which means that the body is not embalmed. That would be more heavily in certain religions, though, that do not believe in cremation or don't believe in embalming, that's their religious beliefs. But those are specific cemeteries that are green, and a body would be wrapped either in some kind of sheet or some kind of biodegradable basket or something, and buried. And the process is that they become one with the earth. So that's not real prevalent, but there are some cemeteries, but it's more religious focused right now. And there is, and I'm not 100% certain on this term, but there is a process where it's almost like a water cremation, where a body is placed in a chamber, and it's a water that's brought up to a heat. And so I'm still kind of learning that process. I've not seen that process, and I don't think it's done in the state of Iowa. I believe there's one state up north from us that does it, but it's still very, very new. And yes, so, but there's a lot that people do with cremains of their loved ones. Some people use cremains and will use some of the cremains to put in like a coral reef and have it buried in the sea, or put it in tattoo ink or something and have their loved one in part of there's so many different things that
never would have thought of
people do. Oh, I know. There's some really creative things that people do with cremains. So there's a lot of different things out there. And of course, there's the mausoleums. If you don't want to bury your loved one, that would be the term for that would be entombment. So the mausoleum is an above ground structure. So so they would be placed in what's called a crypt. So you have that as well.
Yeah. Wow.
So hopefully I didn't throw a whole lot of terms at you there, but
it's super fascinating. So I think it's amazing what you do. It's a service that we probably take advantage of when we don't think a lot about with the people behind it. And just the daily stress I'm sure you endure, and the people that work with you. My heart goes out to you, because I'm sure it's just, sometimes it's probably a thankless job, but you don't do it for that reason. You do it because you have a love and passion for it. And I would really like it if people just didn't feel like it was such a creepy topic, but I get it too, because death is just not something that everybody feels comfortable talking about. So I really appreciate, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you. Agreeing.
Oh, thank you. Well, I really appreciate you popping on here and taking some time out of your precious time, your downtime. Are you on call today?
I am not on call. Yay! I'm not on call. So yes, I was on call on the 4th of July. That, that's the other thing that's one thing. Death doesn't really care about the time. So we do have to work on holidays. So
absolutely.
On the 4th of July, but not tonight.
Yeah. Well, again, Natalie, thank you so much for popping on here. If people have questions, do you have like any way people can ask you questions, or do you want them to just, like, if they have questions, just like put it in the comments below? I didn't know if you have social media or anything like that you.
Well, I am on Facebook. So if somebody finds me on Facebook, I'm on Messenger too. So first name Natalie and last name Shuey. So, and that's SHUEY. So if somebody wants to find me that way, that would be just fine.
Okay, well, cool. Well, I am roasting in my camera. It looks like I am bright red, but anyways, time for us to go. Time for me to let you go. But again, thank you so much for popping on here. I really appreciate you and sharing this information with us.
Yes, thank you as well. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, sounds good. Okay.
Right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.